At her own father-in-law's birthday party, Diana Harlow was grabbed by the arm and physically escorted out the front door by her sister-in-law Cassandra, while 50 family members watched in silence. Cassandra laughed, fixed her designer earrings, and announced to the room that she was flying to the Maldives the next morning to stay at the Seraph Coral Resort, the most exclusive overwater villa collection in the Indian Ocean. What Cassandra did not know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Diana was the silent majority stakeholder of Harlow Meridian Capital, the private investment group that owned the resort partnership outright. And before the sun rose over the Maldives the next morning, Diana made one phone call that didn't just cancel Cassandra's reservation. It collapsed her husband's business credit line, froze the travel agency he co-owned, triggered a fraud audit, and left Cassandra standing at LAX with 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases, no boarding pass, and a phone full of unanswered calls. Now here is the question I want you to think about before we go any further into this story. If your sister-in-law had you physically removed from your own father's birthday party in front of your entire family, then bragged about her luxury vacation the next morning, would you let it go, or would you use every resource you had to make sure that trip became the worst day of her life? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And if you believe that real karma always finds its way back, hit that like button and subscribe, because this channel is where the receipts always come out. Now let's go back to the very beginning, because to understand what Diana did, you have to understand everything she survived first. Diana Harlow did not grow up wealthy. She grew up careful. She grew up watching every dollar, clipping grocery coupons with her mother on Sunday mornings at the kitchen table in their 2-bedroom apartment in Pasadena, California, while her father, Gerald Harlow, worked double shifts at a commercial printing facility in the valley. Gerald was a quiet, disciplined man who smelled like ink and machine oil every evening when he walked through the front door. He never complained. He kissed Diana on the forehead every single night without exception, and told her the same thing before she went to sleep. Precision, baby girl. Precision beats passion every time. Diana absorbed those words like oxygen. She was the kind of child who color-coded her homework folders, who read financial newspapers at 14, who stayed after school not for clubs or sports but to sit with her economics teacher and ask questions about compound interest and market cycles that left the teacher momentarily speechless. She earned a full academic scholarship to UCLA, graduated top of her class with a degree in finance and a minor in corporate law, and then spent the next 6 years working brutal hours at a mid-sized private equity firm in Century City, where she was consistently the youngest and only woman in every senior meeting. She didn't date much during those years. She didn't have time. She had a plan. She saved aggressively, invested quietly, and by the time she was 31 years old, she had quietly co-founded Harlow Meridian Capital with 2 trusted partners, a boutique private investment group that specialized in luxury hospitality acquisitions and resort infrastructure financing. They kept a deliberately low profile. No press releases. No Forbes profiles. No Instagram. Diana believed that the most powerful position in any room was the one nobody knew you held. She met Marcus Webb at a charity event in Santa Monica when she was 33. He was charming, tall, and worked in commercial real estate development. He had an easy laugh and warm eyes, and he pursued her with a patience and consistency that felt genuine. Diana was cautious at first. She kept her business life private, not out of shame but out of habit. She had learned early that men sometimes changed when they understood the scope of what she owned and controlled. With Marcus, she chose to let things develop slowly and naturally. They dated for 2 years. She met his family. She loved his father, Robert Webb, immediately. A retired high school football coach who wore the same brand of sneakers every day and laughed at his own jokes before the punchline. She loved his mother, Patricia, a soft-spoken woman who made cornbread from scratch and called Diana honey, from the very first Sunday dinner. She did not love Cassandra. Cassandra Webb, who became Cassandra Hargrove after marrying Marcus's younger brother, Derek, was the kind of woman who entered every room with a calculation running behind her eyes. She was physically striking, with sharp cheekbones and an expensive blowout that she refreshed every 4 days at a salon in Brentwood. She wore her wealth loudly. Not the earned kind, the borrowed kind. The kind financed on rotating credit cards, and a husband whose travel agency business operated on paper-thin margins and aggressive optimism. Cassandra's entire identity was built on the performance of affluence. She posted curated content constantly: spa days, first-class upgrades, restaurant tables with ocean views. She spoke about money the way people speak about a sport they watch but have never played. From the moment Diana entered the Webb family orbit, Cassandra identified her as a problem. Not because Diana was rude or competitive. Diana was neither of those things. Diana was simply quiet, composed, and completely unconcerned with impressing anyone. And to a woman like Cassandra, who survived on external validation and social comparison, Diana's indifference was an insult she could not forgive. Cassandra began small, the way she always did. A comment at Thanksgiving about how Diana dressed so practically, said with a smile that made the word feel like a slur. A question at Christmas about whether Diana's little investment company was doing okay, framed with exaggerated concern. A habit of talking over Diana at the dinner table, redirecting conversations that Diana started, casually interrupting her mid-sentence to address someone else. Marcus noticed some of it. Diana told him more. He called his brother Derek and asked him to speak to Cassandra. Derek, who was constitutionally incapable of confronting his wife about anything, reported back that Cassandra had no idea what Diana was talking about, and suggested that Diana was maybe a little sensitive. Marcus relayed this message with genuine discomfort. Diana received it with a nod and filed it away. She did not escalate. She did not create drama. She simply updated her internal assessment of every person involved and adjusted her trust levels accordingly. The exclusion started next. Family group texts that Diana was quietly removed from. A brunch for the women in the family that Diana was not invited to. A birthday dinner for Patricia, Diana's own mother-in-law, where Cassandra coordinated the restaurant reservation, the guest list, and the gift, and somehow Diana's name ended up absent from the card. When Patricia thanked the family at the table that evening and read the card aloud, Diana sat with a glass of sparkling water and kept her expression completely neutral. Marcus grabbed her hand under the table. She let him hold it. She did not need his reassurance. She was simply watching, documenting, measuring. And then came Gerald Harlow's 72nd birthday. Diana's father had been quietly battling type 2 diabetes for 3 years, and while he managed it well, the family had been more intentional about celebrating him. Diana had planned the birthday dinner herself, a private dining room reserved at a beautiful Pasadena restaurant that Gerald had always loved, a place where he used to take Diana's mother for anniversaries. She had arranged for 38 guests, a custom cake from the bakery Gerald preferred, a small jazz trio that played the standards he grew up with. She had coordinated decorations, organized the photo display of Gerald's life, written a tribute she planned to read aloud before dinner. This was her event. Her father. Her love made tangible. Marcus's family had been invited as a gesture of inclusion. They were not the center of the evening. They were guests. Cassandra arrived 40 minutes late in a white bodycon dress that belonged at a different kind of event entirely, with Derek trailing behind her carrying a small gift bag that clinked with what was clearly a bottle of something. She air-kissed Gerald on the cheek, handed him the bag without ceremony, and then immediately migrated toward the bar set up in the corner where she began holding court with 2 of Diana's cousins who seemed dazzled by her energy and her stories. Diana watched this from across the room and let it go. It was her father's birthday. Nothing else mattered tonight. The trouble started during dinner. Diana was midway through the tribute she had written for Gerald when Cassandra's voice cut across the table. "Oh my God, Derek, did you confirm the villa transfer? We leave tomorrow morning. I cannot deal with the problem at LAX." The entire table went quiet. Diana stopped mid-sentence. Several of Diana's relatives looked between Diana and Cassandra with visible discomfort. Gerald looked at his daughter with an apology already forming in his eyes. Diana took a breath, smiled at her father, and said quietly, "I'll finish in just a moment, Dad." She turned back to her notes. Cassandra's phone buzzed loudly. She did not put it away. After dinner, while people were moving around and the jazz trio had shifted into background music, Diana was standing with her aunt and 2 cousins near the dessert table when Cassandra appeared at her elbow. She was not alone. She had brought Derek and, inexplicably, 2 of Marcus's older aunts who Cassandra had apparently recruited as an audience. Her eyes were bright with something that was not warmth. "Diana," Cassandra said, in the measured tone of someone who has rehearsed their lines, "I need to speak to you about something." Diana turned. "The thing is," Cassandra continued, loud enough for the surrounding people to hear. "This really should be a family-only event tonight. Gerald's real family. And you're not actually a Harlow by blood. And with everything going on between you and Marcus right now." Diana's aunt stiffened immediately. "Excuse me. I think it would be more comfortable for everyone," Cassandra pressed on, smiling pleasantly, "if you maybe gave the family some space. Tonight is about Gerald. And Gerald's family. It's not really appropriate for you to be running the whole thing like it's your production." She tilted her head. "You understand." The room had gone quiet in that specific way rooms go quiet when something ugly is happening in plain sight and nobody knows whether to intervene or become invisible. Diana looked at Cassandra. She looked at Derek, who was staring at his shoes. She looked at the two aunts, who both had the grace to look deeply uncomfortable. She looked at her father, who had half risen from his seat across the room, his face tight with distress. Diana set down her dessert plate. Carefully, she smoothed the front of her dress. She looked at Cassandra one more time. Not with anger, not with tears, not with any of the emotion that Cassandra was clearly hoping to harvest, and she said very quietly, "Okay. Just that. Just one word." And she walked to her father, kissed him on the cheek, whispered something in his ear that made him grip her hand tightly, and then she gathered her coat and her small clutch and she walked out the front door of the restaurant with her head perfectly level and her shoulders perfectly square. Outside, in the cool Pasadena night air, she stood beside her car for a moment. She could hear the jazz trio still playing inside. She could hear the muffled sound of the party continuing. She pulled out her phone. She had 3 missed calls from Marcus, who had apparently been in the parking lot on a work call when it happened and had been texted the news by his cousin. She did not call him back yet. Instead, she opened her contacts. She scrolled to a name, and then she stopped herself. Not yet. First, she needed to know exactly what she was dealing with. She drove home in silence. She poured herself a glass of water, not wine water because her mind needed to be completely clear, and she sat down at the kitchen island with her laptop and she began to do what Diana Harlow did better than almost anyone alive. She began to research. It took her less than 40 minutes to discover what she needed to know. Cassandra had been loudly celebrating this Maldives trip for weeks on social media. The Seraph Coral Resort. Overwater Villa. 7 nights. Private plunge pool. Sunrise breakfast delivered by boat. The posts were breathless and self-congratulatory in the way that Cassandra's posts always were. Curated photographs of the booking confirmation, the packing process, a flat lay of resort wear and sunscreen and a straw hat arranged artfully on a white duvet. Diana had scrolled past them without interest. Now she looked more carefully. The Seraph Coral Resort. She typed the name into her professional database portal, and there it was. Seraph Coral Resort, Ba Atoll, Maldives. Majority financing stakeholder, Blue Meridian Hospitality Fund, a subsidiary vehicle of Harlow Meridian Capital, LLC. Diana read the entry twice. She almost smiled. Almost. She pulled up the partnership agreement next. Harlow Meridian Capital had entered the financing structure for the Seraph Coral Resort development 4 years earlier, providing $34 million in structured debt and preferred equity that gave them, among other things, a specific clause. A clause Diana had insisted upon personally during negotiations, granting the investment group the right to restrict or revoke resort access for any booking made through affiliated third-party travel partners in cases of verified financial risk, fraud, investigation, or partner compliance failure. The travel agency that had booked Cassandra's Maldives trip was listed in the records as Webb Premier Travel, Derek's company. Derek Webb, Cassandra's husband, and Derek's travel agency was an affiliated booking partner of the resort group, meaning his bookings operated under a sub-agreement that contained an active compliance review clause that Diana's team had flagged 18 months ago due to inconsistencies in Derek's reported commission structures. Diana leaned back in her chair. She laced her fingers together. She looked at the ceiling of her kitchen for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and called her chief operating officer, a meticulous and entirely unflappable woman named Serena Okafor, who answered on the second ring despite it being past 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. "Serena," Diana said, "I need you to pull the Webb Premier travel compliance file first thing tomorrow morning. And I need you to cross-reference every booking they've processed through our resort partnership in the last 24 months. She paused. There should be a reservation under the name Cassandra Hargrove or Cassandra Webb at the Seraph Coral property. A Maldives booking. 7 nights beginning tomorrow. Another pause. Flag it for immediate review under the partner compliance clause. Do not cancel anything yet. Just flag it and send me the complete file. I'll have it on your screen by 7 a.m., Serena said, without asking a single unnecessary question. This was why Diana had hired her. Diana thanked her, ended the call, and went to bed. She slept deeply and without disturbance, because Diana Harlow had never once in her life lost sleep over a problem she had already begun to solve. The file arrived at 6:53 a.m. Diana read it over black coffee at the kitchen island while Marcus slept. The situation was more significant than she had initially anticipated, which was saying something. Derek Webb's travel agency had been operating as an affiliated booking partner for 3 of Harlow Meridian's hospitality properties for 2.5 years. During that period, Serena's initial review flagged 11 bookings where the commission structure reported by Derek's agency did not match the invoice records on Harlow Meridian's side. The discrepancies were not enormous individually, ranging from $800 to $4,200 per booking, but collectively they represented over $28,000 in what the compliance notes described as irreconcilable billing inconsistencies. In the language of financial fraud, that was a category that triggered mandatory escalation. There was more. Derek's agency had processed 3 personal bookings for himself and Cassandra through the partner account at heavily discounted partner rates that were contractually restricted to client bookings, not personal travel for agency principals. The Maldives reservation was one of them. It was booked at a partner rate discount of 62% off the retail rack rate, representing a benefit of approximately $19,400 that Derek had no contractual right to access for personal travel. Combined with the billing inconsistencies, the picture that emerged was not merely a compliance issue. It was a potential fraud matter. Diana forwarded the file to Harlow Meridian's legal counsel, a sharp, experienced attorney named Lawrence Pruitt who billed $450 an hour and had never once in 15 years given Diana advice she regretted following. She attached a single-sentence message. I need to know our exposure and our options by noon today. This is priority 1. Lawrence called at 10:45. He walked her through the exposure, minimal for Harlow Meridian, significant for Derek, and outlined 4 distinct courses of action, ranging from a quiet compliance notice to a full partner suspension with referral to the resort's legal department for potential fraud recovery. Diana listened to all 4 options. Then she told Lawrence which combination she wanted. She wanted the partner compliance clause formally invoked against Web Premier Travel, effective immediately, which would freeze Derek's ability to process any new bookings through the Harlow Meridian affiliated properties and trigger a mandatory audit of all historical transactions. She wanted the Seraph Coral Resorts management team notified of the compliance action, which under the partnership agreement obligated the resort to suspend any active bookings processed through Web Premier Travel pending audit resolution, including all personal bookings made by agency principals at restricted partner rates. She wanted a formal notice of billing discrepancy dispute sent to Derek's agency, requesting documentation and reconciliation within 10 business days, with a clear statement that failure to respond would be referred to the appropriate commercial fraud division. And she wanted all of this done through proper, documented, legally impeccable channels, with every step time-stamped and recorded. Not because she was worried about exposure, but because Diana Harlow did not do anything sloppily, ever. Lawrence told her he could have the paperwork processed and transmitted by end of business Sunday. Diana told him that was perfect. She ended the call, refilled her coffee, and sat quietly for a moment listening to the birds outside the kitchen window. Marcus came downstairs at 11. He looked tired and unhappy and guilty in the way that people look when they know they failed someone they love and are not sure how to begin addressing it. He had texted Diana 6 times the night before. She had responded to all of them, briefly, warmly, without drama, and told him she was fine and they would talk in the morning. He sat across from her at the island and said, "Diana, I am so sorry about last night. What Cassandra did was completely inexcusable, and I've already called Derek and told him." Diana held up one hand very gently. "Marcus," she said, "I know, and I appreciate that, but I need you to hear something. She looked at him steadily. "I'm not angry. I'm not hurt in the way you think I am. I'm okay. What happened last night was Cassandra being exactly who she has always been, and the only thing that changes now is that I am done pretending I haven't been watching her." She picked up her coffee cup. "There are also some business matters I need to deal with this week that relate to Derek's travel agency. I can't discuss the specifics because they involve confidential financial compliance reviews. But I need you to understand that whatever happens, it is a business matter handled by my company through proper legal channels, and it has nothing to do with last night." She held his gaze. "Do you understand the distinction I'm making?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Are you sure you're okay?" "I am perfectly fine," Diana said, and she meant it in every possible way. The next 36 hours unfolded with the precise, unhurried rhythm of a well-engineered mechanism. Lawrence's office transmitted the compliance action documents to the relevant parties Sunday evening. The resort management team at Seraph Coral received the partner suspension notice at 9:47 p.m. Maldives time, which was Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles. The reservation system flagged all active bookings under Web Premier Travel immediately, per standard procedure. The front desk manager, a meticulous man named Ahmed who took compliance matters very seriously, personally reviewed the flagged bookings and initiated the required suspension protocol, which included sending formal notification emails to all affected travelers. Cassandra Hargrove received her email at 11:23 p.m. on Sunday night, Pacific time. Diana did not know this in real time, but she found out later that Cassandra had been awake packing, laying out her resort wear, arranging her toiletry bags, triple-checking her carry-on, when her phone lit up with an email from the Seraph Coral Resort with the subject line, "Important notice regarding your upcoming reservation." According to Derek, who eventually told the story to Marcus's cousin, who told Marcus, who told Diana, Cassandra read the email 4 times before she fully processed what it said. The reservation for Villa Seraph 14, an overwater bungalow with a glass floor panel and a private infinity edge pool, booked for 7 nights beginning the following morning, had been suspended pending resolution of a compliance matter affecting the booking agency. The email was courteous and formal and offered 0 negotiable room. It included a contact number for the resort's guest relations team and a reference number for the compliance matter. It did not offer a rebooking option because under the suspension protocol, no new bookings could be processed through the agency account until the audit was resolved. Cassandra called the resort's guest relations line at 11:40 p.m. She was connected to an after-hours duty manager who confirmed the suspension, expressed genuine regret, and explained that the matter was entirely outside the resort's discretion. It was a mandatory compliance action initiated by the investment partnership group. There was nothing the resort could do until the compliance review was completed. The duty manager estimated the review process typically required 10 to 15 business days. Cassandra then called Derek. According to the same chain of secondhand information, that conversation lasted 47 minutes and involved significant volume on Cassandra's part and a great deal of confused, defensive stammering on Derek's. He had not told her about the compliance notices his agency had been receiving. He had not mentioned the billing discrepancy letters that had been sitting in his business email for 3 weeks, notices he had been meaning to address and had not yet responded to. He had not explained that the partner booking rate he had used for their personal Maldives reservation was technically a restricted benefit that he was not certain he was entitled to use for personal travel. Cassandra discovered all of this at approximately 12:30 a.m. on the morning they were supposed to fly to the Maldives. Their flight was at 7:15 a.m. They went to the airport anyway. Diana found out later that Cassandra had convinced Derek they could resolve it at the gate, that it was some kind of system error, that the resort would fix it once they arrived, that they could call the guest relations team from the plane. They checked their luggage. They went through security. Cassandra posted a photograph from the gate, her 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases on the luggage cart, a champagne glass in her hand from the Centurion Lounge, the caption reading Maldives, "Here we come despite the drama LOL." She had framed it as a minor inconvenience she had triumphantly powered through. She had tagged the resort. She had used 14 hashtags. They boarded the plane. At the layover in Dubai, during the 6-hour connection, Derek got on the phone with the resort again. This time he was connected to a senior guest relations supervisor who confirmed, clearly and without room for misinterpretation, that the suspension was not a system error, that it was a formal compliance action, that it would not be resolved before the commencement of their stay, that the resort was therefore unable to accommodate them upon arrival, and that because the reservation had been made under the restricted partner rate, a rate that required agency compliance certification to access, the standard cancellation waiver did not apply, meaning the deposit, which Derek had paid using his agency's operating account, was not refundable under the current circumstances. The deposit had been $9,400. Cassandra did not post anything from Dubai. They flew home from Dubai, 14 hours in the wrong direction, for Louis Vuitton suitcases. No Maldives, no villa, no glass floor bungalow, no infinity pool, no resort delivered sunrise breakfast. Just a long, silent, recirculated air flight back to Los Angeles where everything they had been avoiding thinking about was waiting for them at baggage claim. And while this was happening, while Cassandra and Derek were somewhere over the Arabian Sea rerouting their lives, Diana was sitting in the first-class cabin of a different flight, heading in the opposite direction entirely. She was flying to New York for a board meeting of Harlow Meridian Capital. She had a glass of sparkling water and her laptop and a folder of acquisition proposals she needed to review before morning. She was wearing a well-cut navy pantsuit and small pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. She looked like exactly what she was. A woman in complete command of her life who had somewhere very important to be. She had not engineered the Maldives situation for revenge. She wanted to be precise about this in her own mind, because Diana Harlow was not interested in self-deception. She had invoked the compliance clause because it was legally and contractually required, because Derek's agency had accumulated documented billing irregularities that exceeded the threshold for mandatory action, because the personal booking at a restricted rate was a genuine compliance violation, because doing nothing would have represented a dereliction of her fiduciary responsibility to her investment partners. Every single step she had taken was not only legally defensible, but legally obligated. The fact that it happened to result in Cassandra's Maldives trip being dissolved was a consequence of Cassandra's husband's financial irregularities, not a product of Diana's personal grievance. This was the distinction, and Diana held it cleanly, without flinching, because it was true. She landed in New York and went directly to the office. The Harlow Meridian board meeting was productive and relatively uneventful. Afterward, she had dinner with Serena and Lawrence at a restaurant in Midtown where she ordered the striped base and a glass of Sancerre, and they talked about the Q3 acquisition pipeline and 3 potential new hospitality investments in Portugal and Colorado. Nobody at the table mentioned Cassandra Hargrove. Nobody at the table knew anything about her. She was not relevant to the conversation. Diana flew back to Los Angeles on Wednesday. Marcus picked her up from the airport. He was quiet in the car. She could tell he had things to say. She waited. He said them carefully. Derek had called him. Cassandra was devastated. The agency was in serious trouble. There had apparently been financial issues he hadn't been fully aware of. Derek was asking if Diana knew anything about the compliance matter since it involved her investment group. Marcus said all of this while keeping his eyes on the freeway and his hands steady on the wheel. Diana listened to all of it. When he finished, she said, "The compliance action against Web Premier Travel was initiated through my company's legal counsel, based on documented irregularities that met the mandatory threshold for escalation under our partnership agreements. I cannot discuss the specifics. Derek's agency should retain a commercial attorney and respond to the formal notice within the required 10-day window. If the irregularities are reconcilable, the review can be resolved. If they're not, that determination will be made by the audit team." She paused. "I am sorry that Derek is in a difficult position. I genuinely am. But I cannot and will not compromise my fiduciary responsibility to my investors, because the person who violated our partnership terms happens to be my brother-in-law." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Is this because of what Cassandra did at your father's birthday?" Diana looked at him. "No," she said. "This is because Derek's agency had $28,000 in unreconciled billing discrepancies and used a restricted partner rate for personal travel that he had no contractual right to use. Those are the reasons. They were the reasons before last Saturday, and they will remain the reasons after it." She looked back out the window. What happened at Dad's birthday is a completely separate matter. and I will address it separately in my own time, in the way I decide to address it." She said that last part quietly, but Marcus heard it, and he did not ask any more questions. The audit concluded 3 weeks later. Derek's agency was found to have processed $31,600 in billing discrepancies. The final tally was slightly higher than the initial estimate, across 14 bookings over the partnership period. The personal booking at the restricted partner rate was confirmed as an unauthorized use of a contractually protected discount. The audit team recommended formal partner decertification, meaning Web Premier Travel was permanently removed from the Harlow Meridian affiliated booking network, and a demand letter was issued for repayment of the $31,600 in unreconciled amounts plus a $12,000 compliance penalty fee per the partnership agreement terms. $43,600. Due within 30 days. Derek's agency did not have $43,600. Diana knew this was likely. She also knew that Derek had been operating on a business line of credit from a regional bank, a line that had been periodically reviewed and was due for its annual renewal assessment in approximately 6 weeks. The bank, as part of its standard due diligence on business credit renewals, would pull any commercial legal actions or compliance findings associated with the business. A formal compliance action and demand letter of this nature, properly documented and registered, would appear in that review. It was not Diana's responsibility to manage Derek's banking relationships. She simply knew how these processes worked. She was correct about what happened next. Derek's credit line review flagged the compliance matter. The bank's commercial lending officer requested documentation. Derek's attorney attempted to negotiate. The bank, unimpressed by the circumstances, declined to renew the credit line and recalled the existing balance, approximately $67,000, within 60 days. Without the credit line, Derek's agency could not maintain its operating cash flow through its slow season. By the 8th week after the audit conclusion, Web Premier Travel had ceased operations. The business was effectively dissolved. Derek told Marcus that they were going to be okay. He told Cassandra the same thing. He said he was going to pivot, start a new consulting venture, leverage his industry contacts, rebuild. Cassandra posted nothing on social media for 16 days, which for her was the equivalent of a public meltdown. Then she came back online with a series of carefully crafted posts about embracing change and choosing peace, and real luxury is a state of mind. Posts that her regular followers received with a confusing mixture of supportive comments and pointed questions about what had happened to her usual travel content. The house was next. Derek and Cassandra had been living in a house in Calabasas that they did not own outright. They had purchased it 5 years earlier with a 20% down payment financed partially through a home equity line of credit that was structured against the business. When the business dissolved and the credit facilities unwound, the financial picture at home became significantly more complicated. Diana did not cause this. She simply knew, because she understood financial structures at a level most people do not, that the cascade was likely inevitable once the foundational element, the business credit, was removed. By the 5th month after the birthday party, Derek and Cassandra had listed the Calabasas house. By the 7th month, they had sold it, at a price that, after satisfying the various credit obligations attached to it, left them with approximately $44,000 in net proceeds. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in the San Fernando Valley. Cassandra did not post photographs of the apartment. Diana learned most of this through Marcus, who learned it from his mother Patricia, who was heartbroken about her son and her grandbabies and who called Marcus every Sunday to give him updates that he then quietly relayed to Diana. Diana listened to all of it with composure. She did not celebrate. She did not express satisfaction. She simply received the information and continued with her life. Her life, by contrast, was expanding in every direction. The Harlow Meridian Q3 acquisitions closed successfully. The Portugal hospitality deal, a boutique coastal resort property outside Lagos, performed beyond initial projections in its first quarter under their management framework. The Colorado ski resort investment was greenlit by the full board. Diana gave her first interview in 4 years, a measured, carefully worded conversation with a respected private equity journal, whose readership was entirely professional, in which she discussed investment philosophy and emerging trends in luxury hospitality financing. She did not mention Harlow Meridian by name. She rarely did. But within the industry, Those who needed to know who Diana Harlow was had long since learned. She also had a conversation with her father. Gerald Harlow had called her the Monday after the birthday party. He had been upset. She could hear it in the controlled steadiness of his voice, which was always how she knew her father was managing real emotion. He told her what he had seen that night. He told her that he had tried to intervene and had not been fast enough. He told her that Cassandra's behavior had been unforgivable. Diana, I don't use that word lightly, but that is what it was. Diana had told him she was fine. He had said he knew she was fine. That's not the point, he said. The point is that what happened to you in that room was wrong, and I am your father and I need you to know that I know that. There was a pause. Your mother would have had some very particular words for that woman. Diana laughed for the first time in 3 days. She absolutely would have, Dad. And she would have been right, Gerald said. Precision, baby girl. Precision beats passion every time, Diana finished. I know, Dad. I know. She visited him the following weekend and they had dinner alone, just the two of them, at his favorite restaurant in Pasadena. She did not discuss the business situation with Derek. She did not need to. She simply sat with her father and ate the pasta he loved and listened to the jazz that was always playing in the background of that particular restaurant and felt, in the particular way that adult children feel in the presence of the parents who first taught them who they were, exactly like herself. The final chapter of the Cassandra situation arrived not because Diana engineered it, but because the world has a way of delivering its conclusions publicly when all the prior chapters have been lived loudly enough. It happened at Patricia Webb's 75th birthday, an event organized by Marcus and Diana together, held at a private dining room at a beautiful Pasadena hotel that Diana had quietly arranged and financed, because Patricia deserved a celebration that matched the size of the love her family held for her. 60 guests were invited. The room was elegant without being showy. A floors Diana trusted had filled it with white peonies and soft candlelight. A chef Patricia loved had designed a prix-fixe menu. There was a photo wall of Patricia's life spanning 5 decades. Cassandra and Derek came. They arrived not in the Porsche SUV that Cassandra had been photographed in for years, but in a leased mid-range sedan. Cassandra was wearing a dress Diana did not recognize. Not a designer piece, just a well-cut dress in a deep burgundy that was actually quite lovely on her. She looked different. Not broken exactly, but altered. The performance was still there, the posture, the practiced smile, but it was turned down considerably, like a volume knob that had been adjusted to a more sustainable level. Derek looked tired and thin and grateful to be somewhere warm. Marcus pulled Derek aside early in the evening, and they spoke privately for 20 minutes. Diana did not ask what was said. She trusted Marcus to handle his family with the same care she handled hers. Cassandra found Diana near the photo wall, approximately an hour into the event. Diana saw her coming and turned to face her with a completely calm, open expression. Cassandra stopped about 2 feet away. She looked at Diana for a moment. Then she said, quietly enough that no one around them could hear, I know you had nothing to do with what happened to Derek's business. A pause. And I know that you could have. Another pause. Her jaw moved. What I did at your father's birthday was, she stopped. Started again. There is no version of that where I was anything other than cruel and wrong. And I know that. She looked at Diana's face and seemed to be searching for something. Not forgiveness, maybe, but honest recognition of the accounting she was making. I'm not asking for anything. I needed to say it. Diana looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, I appreciate you saying that, Cassandra. Nothing more. Nothing less. Not warmth that she didn't feel. Not coldness that wasn't warranted. Just the clean, unadorned truth of the moment, received without embellishment. Cassandra nodded. She turned and walked back toward Derek. Diana turned back to the photo wall. There was a photograph of Patricia at about 40 years old, laughing at something off camera, her head thrown back, completely unguarded. Diana looked at it for a moment. Then she straightened her shoulders, picked up her champagne glass from the nearby table, and went to find her father-in-law Robert, who she could hear from across the room laughing at one of his own jokes before the punchline, the way he always did, and who had been trying to catch her eye for the last 10 minutes clearly because he had a very important story he wanted to tell her. The rest of the evening was beautiful. Patricia cried during Marcus's toast. The good kind of crying, the overwhelmed with love kind. Gerald was there. Diana had invited him because Patricia had always liked Gerald, and Gerald made everyone around him feel slightly more comfortable in their own skin. The jazz trio played until 11. The peonies were perfect. Diana drove home through the Pasadena streets with the windows down slightly, the cool night air coming in, the city lights doing what city lights do at that hour, turning everything amber and quiet impossible. Marcus reached across the console and put his hand over hers on the gear shift. She let him hold it, because Diana Harlow had never needed anyone to fight for her. She had always known how to fight for herself. Not with noise, not with spectacle, not with cruelty, but with precision, with patience, with the absolute unshakable certainty that comes from building something real, earning it with your own hands and your own mind, and never, not once, not for a single vindictive moment, losing yourself in the process. The Seraph Coral Resort opened 2 new overwater villas that season. Diana received a courtesy notification from the management team. A framed rendering of the new wing mailed to her office, along with a handwritten note from the general manager expressing gratitude for the investment group's continued partnership and vision. She set it on the windowsill of her office, between a photograph of her parents on their wedding day and a small succulent that her assistant had given her as a joke gift during a particularly intense deal closing, with a tag that read, "Low maintenance. Thrives under pressure. Just like you." Diana thought that was about right. She sat down at her desk. She opened her laptop. She had 3 term sheets to review, 2 calls to return, and a board presentation to refine before Thursday. Outside her window, Los Angeles spread itself in every direction, enormous and indifferent and full of people working and scheming and dreaming and failing and beginning again. Diana Harlow had work to do. She began.